Okay, hello again. Let me continue with the female reproductive system. Let's start with the female reproductive anatomy. The gonads in the females are ovaries. There are 2 ovaries in a human female, and these ovaries are responsible for the production of gametes. Especially, we are going to call it secondary oocyte actually, or ovum. We can also call it ovum or egg. These ovaries have many follicles inside, and in these follicles, which are the egg chambers, consist of partially developed eggs, because these partially developed eggs are present from birth, since birth. They are called the partially developed egg in the follicle is called oocyte. And they have also in these follicles, there are some support cells. And female gonads, the ovaries lie in the abdominal cavity. There are 2 ovaries. These ovaries is attached to the oviduct or fallopian tubes. We can call this oviduct or fallopian tubes. These are the tubes, and the egg is sent from ovaries to this oviduct, and these also the fetus or embryo will be grow in the uterus. There is a specific layer in inner layer of uterus. We called it endometrium, and endometrium is going to turn into the placenta, and the human nourish their embryos or fetus in the placenta. And there is also the opening of this uterus. It's called cervix to the vagina, and vagina is this layer. Okay, this is all about the female reproductive anatomy. Once an oocyte develops into an ovum by process of oogenesis, and this is the production of egg by meiosis, and ovulation means expel an egg from this ovary to the oviduct. Expels of egg, ovulation. And this egg is present inside the, not egg, but oocyte is present inside the follicle. And after expulsion of this oocyte from the follicle, the remaining tissue of the follicle, the remaining follicular tissue is called corpus luteum, forming a mass, and this yellow mass is called corpus luteum. Corpus luteum secretes some hormones and help to maintain pregnancy. If the egg is not fertilized, corpus luteum degenerates and gets smaller and smaller, and the amount of hormone is going to decrease and menstruation periods start. Obitaxan uterus, let me explain this part of the reproductive anatomy. The egg cell travels from ovary to the uterus via oviduct. And this oviduct, another name for the oviduct is fallopian tube. There are some cilia in this oviduct, and ciliated cells, ciliated epithelium cells actually. They convey the egg to the uterus. Also the uterus, we can call it womb. And uterus lining, inner lining of the uterus called endometrium, and it has many blood vessels. The uterus narrows at the cervix, then opens to the vagina. Okay. Let me explain the oogenesis. Oogenesis, another gametogenesis, and it is the development of mature oocyte eggs and can take many years. This oogenesis occurs in the ovaries again, but different from males. In the females, the oogenesis starts when this female is in embryo in her mother's uterus actually, and during the embryologic period, this germ cell, primordial germ cell, can be divided into oogonium. These oogoniums are diploid cells, and they can increase their number with mitosis during the embryologic period, not the adult. But when the girl is the birth of the girl, all these oogoniums started to meiosis, and they convert to primary oocyte. They are already started to meiosis, and they called primary oocyte. Primary oocyte is the first cell which started the meiotic division in the ovaries, in the follicle. And they present at birth and arrested in the prophase of meiosis 1. And this primary oocyte waits until the puberty, and during the puberty, with some hormones, with the effect of some hormones, these follicles start to grow. These, with the help of FSH and LH hormones, these follicles start to grow, and maturation of this follicle occurs during puberty. And this primary oocyte finished the meiosis 1 and started the meiosis 2, and there is cytokinesis, cytoplasmic division of this meiosis 1 is not equal. The most of the cytoplasm is remain in the secondary oocyte, but little amount of cytoplasm in the first polar body. This first polar body will be degenerate or disappear. There is no role for this first polar body. The secondary oocyte arrested at the metaphase of meiosis 2 will be ovulated. Ovulation means the release of these secondary oocyte from the growing follicle to the oviduct. It is called ovulation. And during this ovulation, this secondary oocyte in the arrested at the metaphase of meiosis 2 is ovulated, and it goes to the fallopian tube or oviduct. The remaining part of the empty follicle will be converted to corpus luteum, and if there is sperm and if fertilization occurs, the oogenesis is finished. It is proceed if there is a sperm. If there is no sperm, only secondary oocyte will be removed from the body with menstruation period. If there is sperm, the secondary oocyte will finish the meiosis 2, and it's going to be fertilized with the egg, and zygote will be formed. Also, another unequal cytoplasmic division will be occurred, and secondary polar body will be shown and then disappear. Okay, this is all about the oogenesis. Oogenesis is the production of ovum or egg or oocyte in the ovaries. It starts in the embryologic period, and then starts to continue in the puberty and to the menopause actually. Let me explain the female hormones, reproductive hormones and their cycles. Ovaries are under the control of hormones FSH and LH, which are secreted from anterior pituitary, we already know, and they are under the control of gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is secreted from hypothalamus. The ovaries secrete 2 hormones, actually 3 hormones. These are estrogen, progesterone, and inhibin. FSH stimulates follicular growth and causes the secrete more estrogen. FSH and estrogen level can be adjusted by negative feedback mechanism. LH stimulates the ovulation and causes the generation of corpus luteum from the remaining follicular tissue. LH also causes corpus luteum to secrete more progesterone hormone, and this progesterone hormone is important for the thickness of the endometrium and continuity of pregnancy actually. LH and progesterone level can be regulated by positive feedback mechanism also. There is another hormone, prolactin, also secreted by anterior pituitary, and also it stimulates the development of milk gland and formation of milk. Okay. Let me explain with this figure. Hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormone to the anterior pituitary. It affects its anterior pituitary secrete FSH and LH, goes to the ovary, and ovary hormones are estrogen, progesterone, and small amount of inhibin. And this estrogen, progesterone have both Estrogen actually have both positive and negative feedback mechanism. The high amount of estrogen in the date of 12 and between 14 causes the positive feedback mechanism and release more and more LH. But the less amount of estrogen and high amount of progesterone have negative feedback mechanism on both hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Okay, what are the main function of the estrogen? Estrogen is secreted in response with the elevated FSH and LH by the ovarian follicle and corpus luteum. Those hormones responsible for thickening of the endometrium, thickening of the endometrium responsible both with estrogen and progesterone. Also in the embryo, estrogen stimulates the development of female reproductive tract, also stimulates endometrium development, and also it's important during the puberty of secondary sex characteristics during the puberty of females. Progesterone is another ovarian hormone. It can be secreted from the follicle, or progesterone can be secreted from the corpus luteum mainly in the response of LH and stimulation from the anterior pituitary. It is released from corpus luteum, but not only corpus luteum, also it can be released from placenta. Both estrogen and progesterone can be released from placenta, corpus luteum, and follicles. And it's very important role in the maintenance of endometrium. In female, secretion of hormones and reproductive events they regulate are cyclic, and prior to ovulation, endometrium, the uterine lining thickens with blood vessels for the preparation of endometrium. If there is no fertilization, if there is no zygote, if the embryo does not implant to the endometrium, the endometrium is shed. And this process, the repeating process every month, is called menstruation. Okay, let me continue with these cycles. The female reproductive cycles have two main cycles. These are first the menstrual cycle or uterine cycle and ovarian cycle. These two cycles, which changes in the uterus, called menstrual cycle, and changes in the ovaries at the same time, called ovarian cycle. Okay, this is the graphs about some hormones and their effect in both ovarian cycle and menstrual cycle. The hormonal control, we started with the hypothalamus gonadotropin releasing hormone affect the anterior pituitary affect the FSH and secrete FSH and LH. And these are their levels according to the days. The menstrual period takes 28 days. And the ovulation in this 28 days, ovulation happens mostly in the 14th day, 14. And ovulation means releasing of this secondary oocyte to the follicle, to the oviduct, from follicle to the oviduct. And this ovulation is a result because of the LH surge triggered ovulation, but this LH surge is triggered by the peak in the estrogen level from the growing follicle actually. And this is the blue one is the estrogen and the yellow one is the progesterone level, and this is the day 14. You see the peak causes the surge in the LH, and the LH surge causes the ovulation. And after ovulation, the corpus luteum, the remaining tissue is called follicle called corpus luteum. And this corpus luteum started to secrete high amount of progesterone and estrogen. And this progesterone and estrogen affect the uterine lining, endometrium, and this we call this secretory phase. And during the secretory phase, the endometrium is the thickest form. During the menstrual flow phase, the uterine menstrual cycle, the endometrium is shedded, and in the 14th day is called ovulation. And this is the proliferative phase. And this is the follicular phase, the growing of follicle. Okay, all about these female reproductive hormones. Let me explain some vocabulary, and also I want to mention about another hormone. It's called human gonadotropin. Menstruation occurs if implantation does not occur. If this happens, if there is a zygote, if there is a fertilization, there is a hormone which is secreted from early blastocyst and placenta. This hormone is called human gonadotropin, human chronoid gonadotropin actually, and this is the hormone to detect the pregnancy test. And this hormone released from the newly developed blastocyst and developing placenta and maintains the corpus luteum during the pregnancy, during the first trimester period. And what is pregnancy? It occurs if fertilization does occur, and this HCG, which is released from the newly developed blastocyst and developing placenta, maintains the corpus luteum in the first trimester, first 3 months. Actually, first trimester means first 3 months. Estrogen and progesterone are secreted by corpus luteum that keep the uterine lining in place and develop the second trimester. If these hormone levels decline and progesterone and estrogen levels rise, now from the placenta secrete both estrogen and progesterone. What is menopause? Menopause results from the decreased responsiveness of ovaries to two hormones, FSH and LH, and fewer follicles develop or fail to rupture because of the protein receptor denaturation, and decreased response to FSH and LH result in decreased level of estrogen and progesterone. FSH and LH lose the feedback inhibition, so the plasma concentration are eventually increased in menopausal women, and who experience as a result of flushing, hot sweat, and irritability as a result of fluctuation in the hormones. And menopause means the menstruation period start to pause, it's stop. Okay, especially in the age of 40 or 50, between 40 or 50. Okay, it's all about the female reproductive organs. I'm going to explain the fertilization, how the zygote unforms in the following video. See you later.